All right. So, like, we are going to review the media, and from this session, from tonight, we'll be doing all the lessons. So, like, there are total four lessons, I believe. How many lessons are there in Indian? I think four or five.
Yeah, I think there are four.
Four. So like this is an overview. If you see the topic demarcation, this is the initial lesson, that is global overview, in which we are going to talk about in general, what is media, and in what ways, what's the relationship of state with the media. And we'll see, there's a little bit, we'll be touching with the types of states like authoritarian and democratic regimes, as well as what are the different trends within media. And if we get time, hopefully we'll be doing one model question as well. So, okay, so what is meant by media? These are the focal themes that we are going to discuss. Global overview, state censorship, global trends in media organization, access. So what is media? You know it. What is media, Zainab?
Do you want me to answer?
Can you hear me?
Yes, Miss, I can hear you. Do you want me to answer in class
Yes, yes, yes,
while you're
yes.
recording? Media is like a tool to spread information. There's lots of different types of media. There's social media. There's the media that's imparted through TVs.
All right,
It can
exactly.
be through a lot of different types of sources of information.
Mm-hmm. So, like, and we see there's a multiplicity of the mediums that we have right now. Like, and in our theme that we are going to discuss, it's this one is particularly about in what ways, there's this kind of information flow that goes on from the side of one end to the other end. So, like, this is something really specific, and this is the real definition of media that we have. From the very beginning we used to teach it like some 15 years back. We used to have a certain type of, like a topic demarcation in which it was something really, generic, in which there's ownership of media, state, and the control of the media. And with the passage of time, it has become so nuanced and it has become so detailed that it's something really, difficult to grasp each concept. And I think you'll second my opinion, Anna, in this regard. How much, well, there's too much that we, to actually grasp in terms of, types of media and the multiplicity of media, isn't it?
Yes, Miss.
Uh, okay. So, we are going to talk about, we know that this traditional media and this new media, and so most of what we are going to do right now is about a certain type of information that goes from one end to the other end. That is like mostly it has a lot to do with the journalistic kind of thing. So which is like the news, the content, the information, so the flow of information. So you know that the difference between infotainment, edutainment, and entertainment. There's a difference between all three. You know, like what we are going to deal with is actually a lot. It's going to we are going to deal with information. All right. So in what ways the information or the flow of information go? In what ways this is the rise of new media. We all know that in recent years, digital technologies have, given a certain kind of momentum to the social media, digital media, and the new media. And this whole thing, it relies a lot on that latest technology, internet, the digital platforms, and which are actually accessed by many devices. There's this convenience, there's this with the with the rise of smartphones, with the accessibility to all these gadgets, it has become something really affordable, accessible, and approachable. So nowadays, the rise of new media or social media has become something. It's it's a household thing, and deprivation of something like this is considered such as just like the basic necessity of life, isn't it? Would you agree to that? Would you like to add something to it?
Yeah, for sure, I agree.
Can you survive without it?
No, not at all, especially in today's world.
Hmm. So like, all right. So like, sticking to the topic, when we talk about the use of media and we see it in terms of global reach or having a global kind of outlook, we see it through some really traditional lens, and that is, we see it through the lens of how much freedom is there. To what extent people in the press, people in the journalistic forums, and in short, people in the mass media are free to voice their, whatever they want to, the information, their own viewpoint, and their own, perspective in life. So it varies. Freedom, when we talk about media freedom, it is actually very different across the nations, across the societies. It varies significantly, throughout the world. There are stark differences in the extent to which journalists can operate, and there's a level of independence. We just can't actually apply the same kind of freedom to all the societies. So the ability to function without government control is very important, something really crucial for journalists to fulfill their duty, their role, and what they do is something very remarkable. The journalists, the reporters, people who are supposed to, or they are obliged to, or they are assigned to complete these fulfill these tasks, they are at a very crucial position. In fact, sometimes they are at a risky position whenever they are actually, covering war, famine, or climatic, something, adversity that has happened. Maybe the areas flooded or any other case, natural disaster. So, like, we see that, and these are the people who are actually performing something really gigantic, like they are the ones who are actually immensely responsible to provide to us all those informations that are really basic to us. So, like, what do we see? There's some highlighters, or there are certain basically parameters through which freedom is actually assessed. Remember this? Do you remember this thing? Any idea about the
Yes,
signifiers?
yes.
You know? So, like, there were Reporters Without Borders, RSF, a French-based NGO, and there's this from Freedom House, this Freedom of the Press report. So both are really important. RSF performs some, has performed over a period of time, some really special kind of, it has basically undertaken a number of findings through which we can assess that to what extent reporters these days are actually totally independent of the government control, of the government's control. There are different governments that they have actually, they are accountable to. So both, these reporters, Sans Border means is a French agency. So Sans means without. So it's the English name. Reporters Without Border, RSF. This is a France-based NGO. So like this performs very crucial this has performed crucial undertaking crucial finding, and from a US based organization, Freedom House, its subsidiary organization, Freedom of the Press report, both have have a certain type of repute, and they have actually uh, you know uh, given certain data through which we can gauge to what extent the governments and the countries are free to perform the journalistic activities. So there are the findings. If we use the RSF index, we see that the world press speed, according to it, It is often considered a very reliable source, and the 2017 report offers an impressive overview of global media freedom, which has highlighted the varying levels of independence and restrictions faced by journalists in different countries, ranging from the countries which were war zones to the countries where there were, curfews, or there was political shutdowns, or many more, such cases where restrictions were imposed on the citizens as well as the journalists to, have the freedom of expression. So, like, which country do you think is the uh, is the is the worst in this regard? What do you think? There was a study that was conducted, and according to that, do you
Yeah,
remember?
I think
You
I
can give
think
me
it was
an
like
answer.
North Korea and
North Korea, very true.
China
Very true, very true.
and I think Saudi
We're
and
going to talk about that later on. They
yeah,
said that's a special study. Saudi Arabia,
mm,
all those VPNs.
yeah,
Huh. So, like as the RSF has evaluated media freedoms in 180 countries, it has covered 90% of world's nations, and the comprehensive analysis, based both qualitative and a quantitative analysis from the journalists and media lawyers and researchers. They have found out that there were, cases that data was on abuses and violence against journalists during the assessed period. So this is something really, like we find that these people, these are the, basically those warriors, I would call them, that they bring about those, pieces of information to us directly from that uh, immediate, from the place, then from, the spot the problem is actually happening. So, I have given you certain examples of people who were the real warriors, and I gave you the example of Shirin Abu Akleh. She was Palestinian reporter, and she was the one who was shot. Actually, she actually laid her life when she, in an explosion, when by the by the Israeli forces, by the IDF, and when her funeral procession was going on, there was another explosion. It was so gruesome. He was a warrior, real warrior. Then I told you about a little story about Jamal Khashoggi. He was basically Saudi-based journalist, and he was also murdered. And there are so many conspiracies about him that he was, I told you, there's a conspiracy, there's a story that he was his body was chopped into pieces, something like that. And alleged info is that he was allegedly killed by the Saudi government, but it's not. We don't know for sure. And then there's Motaz. Motaz, Alhamdulillah, he's alive, but we know that he's been doing that from war zones. He has fled from Palestine, but he's been a very active voice from Palestine. And live from the war zone used to cover. And about the Pakistani reporter, Ashir Sharif, he was journalist as well as a very talented reporter. So he was also killed. And, there are, we know for a fact that what really happened to him. So like it's something really difficult. It's a big task to become reporter or to perform these to become the one of these are the soldiers basically who perform these duties and who are assigned with the task of bringing the latest or information to us, to the public. So there are certain indicators of media freedom, like pluralism is one of the features of media freedom. It means that the degree to which a variety of opinions are represented in the media, then it's also important to have media independence, in which means that there's a certain level to which the media are able to function independently of sources like political, governmental, business, or any other power. And then environment and self-censorship, the nature of the environment in which news and information providers operate, like freedom from harassment or intimidation. Then legislative framework, that means the impact of legal framework governing news and information activities. And transparency. how open the institutions and procedures that affect the production of news and information are. Then infrastructure is very important. The quality of the infrastructure, which supports the production of news and information, like there should be the availability of internet and distribution facilities for the media. So these are all the primary or significant indicators of media freedom. We have also covered scoring or rating of media freedom. Like we are going to talk about the countries that are rated on a scale from 0 to 100 based on the six media freedom indicators we've just discussed. Their high scores indicate lower levels of journalistic freedom. In 2017, Norway was ranked the freest country for journalists with a score of 7.6, while North Korea ranked the worst. And there are stats about it. Norway stands as the freest of all, whereas North Korea, some people also take the names like Myanmar and Afghanistan as well. So, there are two types of systems or governance in which people can operate or can perform these things, like where there is freedom of expression is possible. So that means the degree of media freedom in a country is basically very closely linked to what kind of political system it has. And there are two very significant types, democracies or authoritarian. Democracies, as we know, it means ruled by the people, of the people for the people, characterized by fair elections, and there should be a multiplicity of political parties. There should be universal voting, that means free and fair elections should take place. And universal suffrage, that means everyone within the age bracket should have the right to vote. And liberties should be respected, like expression, freedom of expression, and freedom to have, independent legislative and judicial bodies. So these are all the very important signifiers of having a conducive environment when media can operate freely. And authoritarian regimes, which often undermine democratic, whatever we have discussed so far, all those principles are never respected. They do have elections, but mostly they're ill reputed, basically, as being manipulated, being rigged, offering little genuine choice. Civil liberties are violated. There's a lot of suppression. The criticism of government is just not possible. And the judiciary is under the control. They themselves hire the judges, and the judges in return serve them. So such is the environment in an authoritarian country where journalistic freedom is simply not possible to be possessed by the people. So there's a democracy index. What is the year? I think this is somewhere. The resource. This is source that I have actually quoted. And 2021. Yes. So uh, so the Economist Intelligence, this is EIQ, associated with the Economist magazine, basically provide an annual democracy index that measures the democratic nature of countries. So they have used their own indicators. The indices show that there are 60 indicators which evaluate how democratic each country is, offering additional context for understanding the different variations in media freedom. So, according to that, the study, to cut it short, Afghanistan and Myanmar rank worst in the world democracy, and Australia keeps ninth place, and I think Norway stands at the top again. So, like about there are certain terms that you should remember, the key terms, like what is a democratic regime, what is an authoritarian regime, what are flawed democracies, like which do have elections, but and they seemingly are really free and fair, but it's not always a very ideal picture. Hybrid regimes are those where political systems have the combined elements of some sort, a pinch of authoritarianism with the practices of democracy. NGOs work alongside every country. There's a certain type of a party that is not government based, and it's basically these are the pressure groups. Sometimes these are the environment, they're cost based organization. So they are non-profit, non-governmental, and they work independently of the control of the government. Uh, So, we'll be seeing how and examining the state's role in media, how, in what ways and to what extent the state actually allows freedom of expression. And this goes with like this thing that this it's not always free of censorship. There is a certain type of check, a certain type of curtailment which we see, particularly in authoritarian regimes. So what do we see in the form of media that we see in authoritarian regime is sometimes really grim, sometimes not very, but they do allow media to work, to have a certain type of imagery that they want to portray. So, what do we see? What are the features? The total control over media, state dominates, whether it is a print media or the new media. There's absence of independent media, like North Korea, Eritrea, that was previously Ethiopia, Turkmenistan. These are some examples of those states which do not allow independent media. There's this tool of propaganda, which is used like in North Korea. They do not allow or authorize independent sources to work. There's a certain type of a mantra kind of a propagative element that is there within the whatever they, call as their state media. Strict online censorship, yes. So digital technology is something which is very difficult to control. So, like in these types of states where authoritarian rulers are there, access to internet is tightly controlled, and citizens are limited to, you know, mm, to a certain type of connectivity that is not, which is not very ideal. It's very far from, it's, you know, far from ideal. Basically, they have a system which is tightly curtailed, basically, and that is called, that's an intranet. Like this just happens within that state, uh, which is the material is curated specially and heavily monitored by the government. So like we have these examples in case of when we talk about media and free media. This is the case of the media in authoritarian regime. And how what really happens in authoritarian regimes, that there's this effective media control, and it is done in a very legitimate way. We can't say or raise voice whenever we are in those states. I'll show you in the other one how in North Korea, the person who was assigned for a job, she was an American lady, a reporter or a journalist from America, and she was based in North Korea. And what was her reaction when she was placed in to cover the news and the political scenario of North Korea? And yes, and these days, how do they actually continue with the authoritarian practices? It's by avoiding international criticism. Uh, because of total suppression, because of the blockage or total curtailment, there's very little that the world knows about them. And they balance this information uh, and if they find this kind of a dissent or a critical voice, so they manage the flow of information to suppress dissent. And they do allow some degree of, maybe for entertainment, for maybe the cooking channels and all those entertainment channels, they are allowed to be, broadcasted and have their own content, but it's a certain type of information that they, or messaging that they allow their civilians to to enjoy. And this selective media influence, only certain narratives are promoted, while dissent and alternative views are not considered into account. They're not taken into account. The target audiences of authoritarian media control are basically those people who are at the helm of the power. Media plays a very important role in maintaining stability within the ruling elite. This is the classic case of which perspective, Zainab, which perspective are we actually looking at? If we see a lens, which lens?
Marxism, like it ensures the ruling class. ideologies.
I didn't get you, sorry. Marxism, you're saying?
Yeah, it ensures that capitalists stay in power.
Exactly, exactly. So like this is a classic case of which is which can be seen through the lens of Marxism, that there's a certain type of elite which maintains this kind of you can say stability, and it looks like that it's a really an ideal place where there's no dissent, there's no voice of dissent, or there's no criticism on the government. But it's actually the reverse. Basically, the regime uses media to reassure powerful groups that the government is strong and secure. And to prevent defections or opposition within the elite, media basically runs some sort of propagative campaigns, smear campaigns, or any other propaganda, campaign that actually attempt to discredit their own adversaries, their own rivals, the other political parties. And the main aim is to basically discourage any type of loyalty by emphasizing the consequences of opposing the regime. So it's a classic case of, if you want to write, you can quote it in terms of the suppression, in terms of repression that is used by the ruling elite. For mass audiences, state-controlled media serves to instill both fear and respect for the regime. So simultaneously, they promote political apathy and discourage active participation in governance. For like, if we see the television is a widely accessible medium, is mainly considered a tool or an instrument which is commonly utilized to achieve these objectives. There are people in some countries, in some societies, television is the only medium through which they get access to happening and what's going on. So like news and whatever content is there, it's basically television through which, since because of the curtailment on internet, and maybe press or newspapers have become too boring. So like television becomes the only medium, sometimes accessible medium, which is utilized to achieve these objectives. We are talking about the authoritarian regimes again. And what happens in according to is vis-a-vis civil society and political opposition. So like the authoritarian media really tries to undermine opposition parties and independent civil society organizations. But just as I told you, there are smear campaigns, and there are propagative material and contents. And even we used to believe it, in our country, it happened once in a 20 years back it happened, and when we were children and when we were very young, we used to believe whatever, or whatever was broadcasted on television. It was something that we once upon a time we all were really gullible in our life. So like this is a classic case when we were actually ruled by dictatorships, and we had several of them in past, as you know. You don't know, I know. You have a very little knowledge of it, but so like in many countries, and Pakistan was one of the cases, that there was a lot of media suppression, and there was a lot of curtailment of media that happened, and that just served the purposes of the ruling elite, whether it was a military dictatorship or it was a civilian regime. And there are many examples. It's not just Pakistan. I've just posted the picture because it was very relevant. And so, like, we see some hybrid regimes as well. Like, I won't consider Saudi Arabia to be really authoritarian. Do you think Saudi Arabia is a total authoritarian country? If you were there,
I mean, to an extent, yes, but not really,
so,
because
because the liberties you can have. I think
yeah,
you
because
can't have.
Saudi is opening up a bit more,
Uh,
so it's
in
sort of
terms of
easing its
in
restrictions.
terms of entertainment, or in terms of political coverage.
In terms of entertainment, it's like very, very relaxed, but political coverage is definitely something that is selectively imparted. Like there's a lot of information that's obviously not easily,
Uh,
given out.
So one cannot, I know that for a fact, one cannot criticize the political system or the type of the governance or maybe the people at the powerful position. But is that possible
It's
that if
almost the
they,
same in all Middle Eastern countries.
all Middle Eastern countries, they do work a lot on the public development and security, economy, infrastructure and all, but not, they should not be political. They should remain apolitical. That's what they.
Hmm.
Can you complain about any public issue there's this water or prices or anything like you can complain about that your administrative zones and all like regarding public problems like for roads and safety and all in that regard. You can talk about that, I think.
Probably. I don't know. I've
Probably.
never really been in that situation, but
Because
probably.
they really are really good at maintaining all these, you know. Maybe not, never you
Yeah, yeah,
never
for
will.
sure, for sure. Yeah.
So what they do basically is over here, what the content we have so far in terms of an example of Saudi Arabia, who they use a advanced filtering system to block politically sensitive content. Like they do use those, I think VPNs. They do use them, and some
Hmm.
apps are not allowed. So, like we see that
Hmm.
internet use in such regimes, the use of internet is controlled, online spaces are controlled, politically sensitive content is actually heavily monitored and censored, and sometimes manipulated as well. And so the state narrative has to be told, and so that it does not become a platform for any kind of resistance or rebellion. So like we see that although it's a very advanced and developed country and a rich country, but this is the scenario of the about the media freedom and the freedom of expression. So moving on, we'll find that in what ways strategies of censorship in both authoritarian hybrid states they work. So like repression 2.0. Now, this is something really debatable. Many countries consider that it's not the debate between democratic and authoritarian, but it's basically the way any government can handle dissent. The voice of criticism, the voice, a critical voice. How do they like the example? As I quoted the example of Julian Assange. So he belonged to a modern society. He belonged to Australia, I believe. Huh? So like he actually criticized. He published something really critical, and those WikiLeaks. Those were the basically findings that reveal a lot about the many malpractices, some secrets and some official things which were he tried to uncover, and he was basically eventually he had to face incarceration. So for 5 to 6 years he was he was jailed at Belmarsh. So he was not allowed, nobody could see him, even his family had very hard time meeting. So like repression 2.0 means that authoritarian regimes they have certain modernized ways of having a direct control or censorship, and which is called repression 2.0, which includes intimidation, imprisonment of a critical journalist. And these strategies basically just resonate the rigid media control of the Soviet Union that time, Cold War time. But we see that nowadays we have found it's a very mixed kind of situation in which there's no difference between authoritarian and democratic countries. It's basically the voice of dissent that we see, and that government can term injurious to their national interests. So this is one example. Then we also see that in your book, there's an example of Turkey, in which the coup, the attempt to coup was actually it became unsuccessful because the people they came out, they took to the roads. Tayyip Erdogan was so famous at that time that there was this military coup against him, and it was very easy for him to crack down through, but he just used FaceTime at that time. He used FaceTime, called the public, all the people, thousands and tens of thousands, it came to street, and the whole coup, the whole thing. was unsuccessful. People, they loved Erdogan at that time so much. Now he's become quite unpopular. By that time, he managed by using digital media, the new media, he was able to basically curb the attempted coup against him. So that shows the power of media. Then we see there are various countries which are able to, through the use of multiple variations of their own, the state-controlled or state-sponsored apps, they're smart enough and intelligent enough to have a counter of whatever the world is offering. So since the democratic societies are having a win-winning situation in terms of, prevailing over all the countries of the world by, their apps being used. Uh, their penetration is so strong because of most modern technologies, the digital platforms totally occupied and overrepresented by them. There are certain countries authoritarian in terms of Western democracy or Western lens. They are authoritarian countries, but those countries have created their own multiple counter applications to to challenge the situation. So like we see that authoritarian states monitor and survey critical voices. They're able to block websites and employ state-sponsored trolling to silence opposition. So there's this data as well that according to the 2016 Freedom on Net report by Freedom House, two-thirds of the world's internet users lived in countries where access to social media and communication services was restricted. And for example, like there was this, in Cambodia, there was this the example of self-censorship where fear of harassment or financial repercussion often leads to journalists to journalists to actually resort to self-censor. They could not voice their genuine concerns. And what really happened was because of the pressure, media outlets had to withdraw. And so like they were effectively able to silence critical voices. And it was again the finding of World Association of Newspapers and News Publishers as countries like Malawi and Cambodia could not voice their genuine concerns about what was happening, like rigging in the election was happening. And there was this government that was illegitimately ruling over the people. So this happens in authority. There's a lot of discussion on how China works in terms of, in terms of freedom of expression and how does the how does the modern media work. So there's this discussion about the Great Firewall of China because Chinese have employed one of the most comprehensive internet censorship system in the world, which is known as the Great Firewall of China, and it is designed to regulate both external internet traffic entering China and internet internal or online activities. But people are happy, as long as the people are happy, it's not actually uh, messing up with with their smooth functioning. Uh, uh, although the Americans or the Western world, they consider that it's some sort of very harsh control over the flow of information, which has limited the access to foreign website and it has curtailed public freedom or public expression or right to expression. So like we see there's a rise in the usage of VPNs. So since we have recently experienced it since 2, 3 years, Pakistan is facing the same. There's a very strict ban on Twitter, on X, and we have to use VPN to use it. So like what is VPN? It's basically this is the VPN means the virtual private network and this can be used to access any content that's been blocked by the government. We see that how in since 2018, and when we talk about in specifically in the case of China, the government has implemented stricter laws requiring all VPN operators to obtain government licenses. And over there, it's a total monopoly of the Chinese government on on the avenues or the platforms from where media can can work or operate. So there are state-run telecom giants like China Mobile, China Unicom, China Telecom. And they have been mandated to ensure that their combined 1.3 billion subscribers cannot use VPNs to basically curtail any type of information that they consider injurious to the state's interest. So this shows the state's robust efforts to maintain strict control over digital communication. These are the logos: China Telecom, China Mobile sector. About democratic regimes, when we talk about them, we see that there's another case, and that is like democracies generally ensure higher level of media freedom, and when we compare them to the authoritarian regimes, there are limitations in democratic societies, uh, but like their focus is on the public welfare, public interest, and they do try to limit any type of misinformation or any type of an event where hate speech or any such act could harm the public interest. So media plurality doesn't mean that there should be so much of uncontrolled content to be aired or broadcasted that would come into the category of hate speech. For example, the UK CMA blocked 21st Century Fox's 2018 takeover to prevent excessive Murdoch family trust influence. And we also see state control in democracies contrast with extensive censorship that we see. So there's a certain type of limitation that's there in democracies, yet definitely that censorship is very different from the censorship that is present in autocratic regimes. What are the challenges in democracies in terms of media freedom? There are, democracies can experience attack on press freedom during times of turmoil. That can be political changes, political viewpoints, and differences of political viewpoints. There are some, according to the Western or woke analysts, they say that it should not be a populist regime. Populist regime is like some people when they have excessive power or charisma over the people just become blindfolded by the charisma of that person. Like they quote Trump's example a lot in this regard, and they say that his presidency from 2015 was a point where where there was a lot of churning or running of news as fake news. And we have other examples as well. Like we have examples like other countries where state control can actually over public broadcasters can actually become harmful to the content and to the right of the people of having free content. Uh, in, although it is apparently you know a new kind of democracy, in Poland there was this targeted they targeted the newspapers by restricting state subscriptions and advertising support by banning them or by undermining them in terms of finances. So even in the nascent kind of democracies, we can find such examples where it's not a very ideal situation in terms of media freedom. Again, Hungary just like Poland. It is becoming, it's trying to become or getting that posture of a democracy. And over here as well, there was this government of Viktor Orban, and Viktor Orban is not is he's been reputed as the one who tried to curtail media of Hungary. Since 2010, he's been the ruler, and he has tried his best to to have those media outlets that are state-run or pro-government. So, like you can see, even in democracies, the situation is not so, it's not that rosy. It's not the picture is not really rosy. And when we talk about countries like Russia, definitely, when we talk from the lens of Western societies, Russia is considered um, an authoritarian regime where Putin has been labeled as a demon, a kind of a person who has got the status of an enemy. So this was the title he got, Predator of Press Freedom by RSF. So he has tried a lot, definitely, to have his complete control over the press and silence any voice that is a voice of dissent. So, like in democracies, in short, when we see the situation, democracies generally have a greater media freedom, but they do have, they all of all the democracies are not similar, are not the true reflector of the ideals of all those rights and liberties. So we see whenever there's a populist government or a very, you know, extremely popular government, there can be the government can have its own rules and regulations, even in terms of freedom of media. So there are different trends in the global media, like global context. When we see, it is it is driven by capitalist interests. So it reflects several transformative trends we have seen lately, driven by economic pressures. And there are interconnections between nations. There are four key developments that actually signify this evolution. There's capitalist globalization, neoliberalism, deregulation, and digitalization. Capitalist globalization means it has reshaped capitalism into a global system, which has reduced the importance of national boundaries. And like Robinson has linked this shift to the 70s economic crisis, which actually, gave rise to the TNCs. And TNCs means transnational corporations. The collapse of communism in late 80s further integrated regions like China, USSR, some parts of Africa into global capitalist network. So like we see that these are those signifiers, companies, the TNCs, which have pulled the strings of, the globalization and they have taken it to a new level. Neoliberalism is basically a political theory which talks about, which talks about in what ways market is actually really essential in every regard. So, like globalization of capitalism has taken neoliberal ideology, which advocates very little actually interference of the state in the market situation, the businesses, and just to give rise or give ample freedom to the businesses to work independently. So neoliberals support policies that prioritize free trade and corporate growth. So we see the institutions and subsidiary organizations of even the UNO like IMF, there's WTO, World Trade Organization, World Bank. They have been really uh, active in terms of promotion of all such capitalistic policies, which have led to hundreds of free trade agreements and have given rise to the TNCs. Now we see McDonald's everywhere. We see all these TNCs to have to maximize their profit by even working in countries like even like Afghanistan. We can see their presence over there as well. Deregulation means it's kind of a mm, you know, it's kind of a enabling environment in terms of keeping businesses out of the control of the state, promoting growth, but uh, at the same time, these are the ones which give a lot of access to everyone. So sometimes it's at the cost of protection of the consumer. Like McChesney has noted that media deregulation, especially in the USA, has enabled companies to dominate markets and they drive massive media and telecom industry growth globally, but at the cost of privacy of the people, sometimes at the cost of maybe changing the collective social behavior as well. So, this is how it is done. Digitalization is another very important side effect, but at the same time, a signifier of how, media has basically uh, gone to a new height. So, it means a shift from analog to digital. We all know for a fact that there's a transition from manual analog technologies to digital platforms, enhancing efficiency and connectivity. There's global connectivity. Internet has become the the, the single most signifier of all these things. Digitalization, media consumption, it has actually given a lot of access to readily available news, readily available entertainment, or whatever you want to, the service or the satisfaction you want to have, instantaneous and immediate and quick accessibility. Global internet penetration has gone to a new level again. There's a widespread usage, all age groups, by all age groups and by all levels, at all levels. Uh, you know, um, so this has gone digital. And device diversity. People are so, in comfort these days that they have accessibility and facility that they can tune into their cell phone, their tablets, their computers. So this diversity has totally changed the game. Uh, Anyhow, like we see, however, that there are discrepancies, which are like there are still the nations which are underdeveloped or developing, and not all the countries have equal access to internet. There's a digital divide in which many countries are still on, television. They still not have not reached the digital connectivity or that instant knowledge or information that they want to have. So in terms of impact on society, we see that there's an economic transformation which has given rise to a boost to e-commerce, remote work, digital entrepreneurship. There's social connectivity. We all know about it, that it has actually, like given a lot of facilitation and help and gaining knowledge and all. Although there are gaps in literacy, not everyone is like that. Then there's cultural influence. There's shift in cultural consumption patterns with the rise of streaming services and digital content. So now, but there are certain business empires which control the media, and in very subtle ways. Like these are the organizations, these are the conglomerates. They are the large corporations that own and control multiple companies. And these organizations diversify their operations to reduce risk associated with relying on a single sector. So while benefiting from shared resources and economies of scale, and the example of a conglomerate is Disney, which owns a wide range of businesses like Pixar, Marvel, and others, and television networks like ABC, ESPN. So a conglomerate has a wide-ranging kind of an impact. And when we talk about media conglomerate, it is a large corporation that owns and operates multiple media companies or platforms, often spanning various types of media like television, film, publishing, radio, digital media, and streaming services. These conglomerates control a significant portion of the media landscape, and they are able to influence all the things like the production, distribution, and consumption of content globally. What what adverse impact or what negative impact can be there of having presence of media conglomerate in our society? Can you cite any?
Like you're talking about how like majority of
Yes, I'm talking about the
if
world.
yeah, again, they can use that to push an agenda.
Hmm. Put
They
an
can use that to
agenda.
their own benefit and, impart whatever information they want and sort of just influence like the masses with whatever opinions and ideas they want to infiltrate about a certain issue or a certain topic or a certain group of people too, for that matter.
Hmm. So like we can have many examples, which I'm going to definitely share with you in the question. But over here we have examples like Disney and Warner Brothers. Disney owns, as I told you, a number of multiple, channels, broadcasting agencies, as well as television channels. And Warner Brothers, likewise, they have channels like and studios like Warner Brothers, HBO, CNN, Discovery Channel. So it's good and it's positive as well. There are pros and cons both related to this development, and we're going to talk about that. Trends in media groups, the rise of media conglomerate. These are some examples which we have covered. So there are two types of integration. Now, the, it's horizontal as well as vertical. Horizontal integration means cross-media ownership. That means it involves media companies owning a variety of media types like Murdoch family. As you can see, this is the kind of a tree of Murdoch family. So you know that they have different generations who are their different family members who own different channels and the avenues. So what really happens is that Murdoch family, News Corp, 21st Century Fox, they own newspapers in countries like Britain, Australia, and USA, as well as book publishers, film studios, and television networks. So this diversification enables these companies to dominate across multiple media platforms. So, like, for instance, if they want to air a certain type of kind of, you know, like, mm, if they have a certain motive or agenda, so they have different avenues to project the same through the multiple or diversified avenue. Whereas the other type, like vertical integration, it refers to a single company controlling multiple stages of the production and distribution processes. So this strategy enhances economic control over the market environment. A prominent example is Time Warner, which not only owns Warner Brothers Film Studio but also operates a global cinema chain to showcase its films. So similarly, Netflix, which started as a video streaming service, has since 2013 produced its own original films and TV shows, integrating production and distribution. It means that it's a sort of vertical integration is a kind of a quality assurance system in which, from various levels, they keep, they have a strong grip on all the levels of, from the time any idea is, ideation time, an idea is floated to the materialization journey and production. They have the full control over the different procedures. To what extent people have an access to global media? So, like, there are trends in access. Are we able to get what we really want? Like, we do have access to most modern, most sophisticated kind of information that we really want. If I really want to grab a piece of research from archive.com, I can have that. If I have the subscription, it's really easy for me. But is it possible for everyone? So let's see. So like we have seen that there's global expansion in terms of access, in terms of how it has grown significantly between 2012 and 16. We have seen a behavioral shift in which audience basically combine the traditional new media for news and entertainment. The trends in media are that the internet experienced the highest user growth, since its inception. What are the declining formats? Newspaper and radio consumption has declined for sure, definitely. And in terms of internet, and there's this dramatic shift, dramatic growth. In terms of, if we take it in bits and pieces, there were sometimes, the consumption was slow. But when we talk about how, in what ways smartphone has changed the scenario, so we have seen that there's an immense role of mobile becoming, the main or instrument of, or of, having it as a piece of, as a, instrument of information. Subscriptions have increased. They rose from 3.89 billion to 4.83 billion. And so this is a big number. Broadcast media, may we see that as role of television remains dominant globally. If we see we are taking the slice globally, so it has remained at increase. But when we talk about regional dominance, in Africa, television is overtaking radio. Digital in the journey of digital medium, there's an uneven progress in shifting from analog to digital. And in some cases, when we see the newspaper, it's a very grim situation. There's a decline in print. In regional, if we see a regional, example, this circulation has increased in countries like India, China, Indonesia. Digital adaptation is more into, apparently it has been the case in which newspaper launched online versions with varying access models in which free or paid subscriptions were available. the question. So the model question that I have so far is, it's May, June 2024. Media content is controlled by editors and journalists. Have you done this question before?
No, I don't think so.
Hmm. How do you find the question? Is it good enough? I think it challenges you.
Yeah, it definitely is a
Uh,
challenge, but I would want to attempt it, inshallah.
so do it, and I'll give you a small uh, help in this regard. So like, the structure setting, you have to set the scenario, all right, or give us brief info, and in which you have to talk about that. It's basically about what, which media? Basically about broadcasting media or press, about both.
Yeah, it's about like the main. I think it covers all types of media.
Yeah, it can cover all types of media, because we know that now we do have in the in the broadcasting media as well. We do have editors, board of editors, as well as we have people who do research. The journalists are there as well, and it's the other thing that they are more of moderators and presenters. The journalists sitting over there, and so like, to what extent are they really free and on their own to decide what content is actually their own brainchild, and to what extent they are free or allowed to conduct their journalistic activity. So like, you can write that in what ways they are the ones who shape and direct media, and they have a dominant position in which they can influence the decision making, and in terms of curating the content and all. However, but definitely there are other forces as well. Like, there are regulators, there's the government, there are advertisers, as well as audience, not to forget the audience. But sociologists do have their own opinions about how much autonomy they truly have, as there are other forces which which might limit their independence. So, like, in terms of assertions in favor, you can talk about that in what ways uh, they themselves, the journalists and the editor themselves, are the gatekeepers and agenda setters. What is agenda setting and gatekeeping? It's something that the editors, the editorial board, or the journalists themselves, draw some lines, that what is the red line, or what is the boundary line which they should not cross whenever they are presenting a piece of information, or trying to air it or broadcast it. So like, they are in control of day-to-day matters. They shape what reaches the public. Then they do have a certain type of camaraderie. They they have very close ties with their own, the co-workers and team members. So there's a mutual support. Then they have professional support as well. They know their job, technical expertise, they have the advantage, they are the specialists, and they know that um, you know uh, that what type of piece of information and does provide them a powerful edge over the others, maybe their counterparts, or maybe the rival media agency, and as well as newspaper. Uh, we talk about that. And they can influence public debate. They can, in whatever way they can steer public discussion. And they're so powerful, and they're so influential. And they do have the content manipulation skill. Their professional skills allow them the subtle type of, edge in shaping the content to shape their interests. So, like, this is all about how much freedom do they have in terms of shaping the content. But there are certain limitations, like if we see from Marxist viewpoint, it's always owner control. Media owners hold a very important, they hold the real power over media, management, and definitely they're there to maximize their own profit. Editors and journalists have to follow owner's line. Then there's feminist perspective, who say that it's basically male-dominated leadership, in which top editorial roles are held by men, which limits the power of women to influence in media decision making. Pluralism says that there is this shared influence. Media powers is fragmented. It's always very bifurcated or fragmented. There are audiences, there are advertisers, there are the government, all influence the content. So media has to cater to everyone. The new media has, again, the citizen journalism. It has given a different picture, a different color to the picture. So digital platforms allow any Tom, Dick, Harry to, project what they want to. They have the cameras on their mobile, and they can, which allows the ordinary people to create and share content, which has reduced the traditional gatekeeping role of editors and journalists. So this is a very good mix of all, and this is a little bit on the studies that can be incorporated, like the Marxist perspective, Miliband study, in which, how media is controlled by elites to spread dominant ideology. Pluralism says something else. They say that, like James Whale argued that media reflect diversity of society, and there's not a single presence of any single group that only dominates or controls. Feminist perspective, in which Karen Rose has analyzed the gendered nature of media industries. And not to forget Baudrillard, a postmodernist perspective, who talks about hyper-reality and how media is no longer controlled. Remember the Murdoch and all those conglomerates, and how do they actually try to, the Disney World, the reality that beyond the reality, the hyper or surreality, that they want to project to the people. So, like the lines of between right and wrong, good and bad, even genders, the lines are basically blurred. I hope this is clear to you, inshallah.
Mhm.